time to come here this evening. We are very happy that you're spending your evening here with us to hear more about heritage. So the panelists and the speakers were chosen tonight because they have a different perspective and a different use of heritage in their work. And so we're very privileged to hear from them. So first up, we have Cherin and Jason from LAANK. And LAANK is an interior architecture firm, and I'll leave them to share more about their works and how they use heritage in their works as well. So can we give a round of applause to welcome them?
Okay, hi evening everyone. Thank you for coming down to spend some time here with us, and thanks also Edith also for the invite to speak today. So like what Jackie said, our company is called LAANK. We do interior designs. We've been doing it for about 5 years. So Cherin here is the creative director of the firm. So all the work that you're going to see later is all her magic and her vision and all that. My role, I do a little bit more client servicing, a bit of the strategy and all, but most importantly, I make important decisions like where to eat for lunch and all that. We've been very fortunate in the last couple of years. We've handled projects from 30-room hotels to as small as a 2-meter shelf. So I think we've been very lucky to touch on many different kinds of projects. We focus a lot on commercial work, and I think so. Okay. So today we are here to talk about 3 different ways that we use heritage in our work. Where's the screen? There's us. I look a lot younger then. Okay, so in no particular order, we shall start with the first project of ours that we'll cover. So the first one is, we would like to talk about how we use heritage revive, and is the most straightforward way that heritage is used is basically marrying what we know from the old and applying it into our project.
So I'm going to just talk about National Kitchen at Violetwood. Well, part of our design philosophies is that we need to understand very well what our clients are about, basically what the DNA of their brand is about. So it's about knowing who your clients are and reflecting a huge part of the client to the work that we do. So for Violetwood, I think for some of you who know the brand, they are a Peranakan restaurant. And when they came to us, they wanted to create a restaurant that would eventually become the Singapore restaurant. And I think so I guess the question to us initially is what is a Singapore restaurant? Because there is really no such benchmark in the industry for that. You know, you go to Malaysia, you go to London, you don't really know exactly what a Singapore restaurant looks like. So when we were doing Violet, it came to us, we were trying to understand who Violet is, her contributions to Peranakan culture, and also what would a Singapore restaurant look like. So we got a chance to actually interpret that into this space. And we started to look into historical buildings and places and even the Peranakan culture. And I think what we came to realize is there are very special buildings like Raffles Hotel and even National Gallery, the old City Hall. And we thought that was something that was quite representative of what Singapore was, not just because of the Straits Settlement, but also because of how the look of colonial could be something great as a backdrop to the style that we're trying to achieve. And then we introduced Peranakan elements. So we have things like Peranakan tiles, which you see in our work. So if you look at this slide over here, these Peranakan tiles were actually salvaged from old shophouses that were about to be demolished. And the client was great. The client was actually pumping in extra budget to make sure that we got the real Peranakan tiles and not those that were printed. And the reason why we were so particular about using the real tiles is because we wanted to showcase that in Peranakan cooking, there is no shortcuts. So in getting real good materials for this project as well, there's no shortcuts to that. So we used it and we showcased it kind of like how a gallery would showcase a piece of art. So it was framed up and it was kind of complemented as a feature piece on the wall. So we also wanted to enhance the experience of Violet Woon, and not that it's just a restaurant where you sit and then you eat and then you go. So we basically did something very simple, which is to frame up a piece of history. You know, we framed up a lot of personal things from Violet Woon, and you know, we went to her house, rummaged through her stuff, and we realized she has such a colourful story to tell. So we framed up quite a bit of items, and it became part of the dining experience where she can do quite like a show and tell as well. So she talks about her experience in France, how she, you know, did kind of rioted with a baguette in her hand. So that becomes part of the dining experience where she can actually host people like, as if it was her own dining room. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Heritage Translated. So for this particular project, it's actually a skincare clinic in Tudor Court. For those of you who know where Tudor Court is, it's actually at Tong, and it's a row of black and white houses that's conserved. And it has elements of art deco from the buildings. So we wanted to bring that into the space that we're designing. And when we spoke to the client about what they wanted to achieve in the space, they basically said to us that we wanted a space that's so beautiful that our clients will understand that as doctors, as aesthetic doctors, we understand what beauty is. So we translated that into an art deco style. And if you research a little bit into art deco, you also realize that art deco is a lot about symmetry and geometry lines, which is a measure of how beautiful a face is. So the more symmetrical your face is, the more beautiful you are. The more beautiful you are considered to be. So you realize you apply that into the space that we're designing, and instead of using like art decor, furniture and things like that, what we did is we applied art decor as a texture. So you can see all these crazy lines going on, and there's a lot of symmetry, but at the same time it doesn't come across as like a stylized decorative furniture place. Yeah, so that's a reception area, and you know, right down to doors and the floorings as well. So this was another way that we kind of integrated heritage. That's a clinic. And the last one, Jason.
I think so we're just trying to keep this very short. So we had heritage literally in the Violet Woon project, where we took Peranakan tiles, a bit of the old, and using it in our designs. And then in the Epion clinic was really, it was in an old space that we wanted to translate, but not literally looking old. So it was very modern, the second one. I think in our third project, what we were trying to do was tell a story. So you don't really see a lot of old things in this project, but because of the heritage, it just becomes part of the brand and part of the experience of the buying experience. So Buying Artisan, I think some of you may be familiar, they're a notebook brand. They've been around since 70s.
Yeah, as well as Popular Bookstore, if some of you remember that.
So they made that leap to take on a new brand position, and this was in their factory. So what we did is that we decided to retell the story of their heritage, and it was based on pillars about sharing. So essentially, this is the frontage of the building, and it leads into a retail area. And then the moment you step in, there's this huge glass. I think you can't see it properly in the picture, but there's a glass showcase, and within is actually one of their letterpress machines that they kept from their early days. So guests can actually sit around this showcase, and then you can ask for coffee or something, and then you can talk about the whole history of the brand. So it's like an educational process that's happening. So we're sharing about the brand, all right. And then next to it, the next part about sharing is also the retail experience, where we designed a very modular space. So we've got shelves that some fixed on the wall, but you can see the front part area, there are little boxes that we can rearrange, because they do a lot of collaborations with illustrators or designers or photographers to come up with limited edition notebooks. And so that again becomes the brand sharing themselves with other creative people. And then of course we come to sharing a notebook with your friends. So customize a notebook with your partner's favorite color is blue, you get a blue notebook and customize it with yellow paper. I don't know, so there's so many ways thousands of ways to get this across to people. Then the interesting story is Mr. Chong, right? So he's one of the oldest staff working there, been making notebooks since the start of the brand. So what happens is that he has a little office area in the back of the workshop, and that's where he creates the notebook, right? What we've done is also then use this opportunity to share a different part of the brand. So it became a little bit of a notebook making session. So it became a workshop area. And then in this area, how people start sharing is also through the stories that he tells and through the skills that he imparts to people about how to make all these notebooks. So then again, then it becomes another layer of sharing. Yeah. So yeah, I see the time. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that was the three kind of in a nutshell, 3 projects that we pulled out just to share with you today about the theme about heritage made new. So I hope we didn't talk too fast. You can follow us on Instagram and our website. If you need no more information. So thank you.
They actually from binary style, so they actually design colorful scarves that are inspired by nature, architecture, and heritage in Singapore. So can we give a round of applause to welcome them?
Hello, I'm Santhi. I'm actually the owner. Hi, good night. So I'm Santhi. I'm the oldest twin by 5 minutes. And tonight I'm going to be a good sister and let my youngest twins do the talk, okay? Hello, good evening everybody. I'm so happy to be able to share our stories here tonight. Okay, I feel that the sound is not very, but it's okay, right? Yeah. All right, so before I start, I would like to share a little bit about our background. So as Santhi already said, so this is Santhi. You see, Santhi is the one with the bang. I'm sure that 10 minutes from now you will all forget. So I'm the one who's doing the talking today. So we are both sisters, and we are 5 minutes apart, as Santhi says, so we are twin sisters. And on top of all, we are actually both trained as architects like Cherin and Jason, so we have a lot of architect speakers tonight at the audience. While Santhi is focusing more in architectural design, she actually built buildings. Well, I never did that. So she designed very nice resort in Bali, so you can check it out later. Ask her if you were interested. And later she decided that she hasn't done enough studying since she took a Master of History in NUS in Singapore. While for myself, I study more about urban planning. And later, I take a position in an urban think tank here in Singapore, which is focusing more on the future cities innovation, which is part of the NRF. So together, Santhi and we started this company, a design atelier that is called Binary Style. So there is a style missing here. Santhi was scolding me that I picked the wrong logo, so it's actually supposed to be Binary Style. So Binary Style is focusing mainly on scarf designs, and also prints on textiles. So that's what we do. So as an architect, we are more accustomed to deal with heritage more from the perspective of built environment. So for example, like building, cityscape, and landscape. But of course, we also understand that there is also another part of heritage, which is the intangible one that is very important as well. For example, like stories, folklore, local practices, cultural practice, dance, music, and so on and so forth. And we understand that this is also very important in the making of the cultural identity of a country like Singapore. So Singapore is very rich in my point of view of this both type of heritage, both tangible and intangible one. So the thing is, there are many things. The heritage in Singapore has been the source of our inspiration since day one. There are, for example, there are many different neighborhoods, different iconic neighborhood, history, practices, and so on and so forth. So the story with Binary Style is we would like to retell or express or represent heritage both intangible and intangible, mostly in a visual way, playful, meaning that we don't really want to be too serious about it. So it has to be a little bit unpredictable, a little bit humorous as well. And of course, it has to be thoughtful. So by the end of the day, you remember the Santhi studied history. So every time I was making a research about one particular historic icon or building, and Santhi, no, you get it wrong. You really have to remember, because somebody will pinpoint to you like, look, you get the facts wrong. So then I learned from her that you have to be really careful about that. And eventually, because we are dealing with textile, with prints on textile, so our creation has to be very, very colorful. So this is actually our signature design. So to date, we have 60 over designs. So as I told you, there are so many things in Singapore. And I think both of us, we are actually non-Singaporean, even though in total, for the both of us, we've been living in Singapore for maybe more than 25 years combined. So we are actually not really strangers here. But still, as a non-Singaporean, we think that we have a different way in digesting, in perceiving the whole context of Singapore in a slightly different way. For example, something that could be completely mundane for Singaporeans, for us could turn into something that is very fascinating. For example, like the culture of drinking coffee at the kopitiams, and also the different cultural objects like the satay fan that Santhi has there, and the abacus where all the old uncles in Chinatown are doing the counting. So for us, this is very fascinating, and we like to capture this in our creation. So I guess this is the kind of thing that probably give our creation, our design is a different edge from the other designer. So in general, our design can be categorized in several big groups. So one probably is maybe is in history, so the history of Singapore. The second one is about the iconic neighborhood of Singapore. The third one, so we have also a collection with the National Heritage Board. And then we also have inspired by cultural practices and objects in Singapore that could be historical and also contemporary in the same way. And of course, we also have nature, as Jacqueline said in the beginning. So I just quickly show what our design looks like, because I already get this 5 minutes warning apparently. So for the Singapore history, so I don't know, I mean there are many Singaporeans around the neighbors, so this is our representation of how we think that when Sang Nila Utama met the Singa at the founding in Singapore, this perhaps would be how it looked like at the scene. So Singapore are mostly jungle, and of course nobody really knows how Sang Nila looked like, I mean, of course. But this is actually our interpretation of the historical moment. So another design, we try to represent the story of the iconic ladies, the Samsui ladies, which is with their bravery, they're really kick-ass, that they built Singapore after the independence. So we try to capture this look, the lady in the blue attire and the iconic red headdress in a scene that looks like a national building in a way. And we also represent the Singapore history, the contemporary history, by capturing, of course, the HDB development, and also the local playground that is quite iconic. And here you can see the mahjong table, where you can find in the void deck in many HDB areas. And then we also have here, for the series of the iconic neighborhood, this is Kampung Glam. And you can see that our training as an architect always comes out from time to time. So we always try to draw buildings like the Istana Kampung Glam and also the Sultan Gate, and we also try to capture different cultural icons as well, like the Kuda Kepang and different kind of things. And this is, for example, is our very popular Peranakan scarf. So we try to capture here, again, you see, being architects, we really cannot get away from here. So we have the facades here of the Kun Seng Road with the baby powder color facade, and the iconic flower here, the peony flower and the peacocks, and also the tiles. And we also make this facade as a wallpaper. We work together with a company that is called Layer Play. And this one is our most popular ever scarf. So maybe you are familiar with this particular design. Oh, sorry. So this one is the neighborhood that, in fact, this is actually the first scarf that I made for the company, and it turned out to be really popular and really one of our bestseller. So again, I can assure you that all this building here is super accurate in terms of scale and proportion. And maybe not the color because we have to try a little bit. So you know, being architects, so we are very, very anal about this. But of course, we don't always want to capture things that is very, feasible. There are things, you ever wonder what is this? This is actually one of the window grill close to the parking lot in Tiong Bahru. And if you look somewhere here, this is Bob the cat, which is a very popular cat in the neighborhood that was adopted by the residents. And what else there? Oh, in here, somewhere here, here. If you know what it is the uncle that used to be selling satay in Tiong Bahru, but he's long gone. But we capture it here. So I guess we consider this also part of the historic documentation. And we have also the Little India, and this is Santhi's design, and she's trying to capture all this display of Sari. And if you know what it is the fortune telling parrots that is normally stand around in front of Komala Villa. So this is something like little detail that we'd like to capture in our design that probably nobody has ever thought about. And Boat Quay, of course, with the bumboat, and the Chinatown with the People's Park. And if you see here, you remember there is an Anglo uncle that is selling sausages there? Yeah, this is, here he is. So we also immortalize him here. So this is an NHB collection. So we work together with the curator of the different museums under the NHB. And of course, here we also have to work in a slightly different way because we have our own interpretation, but the curators also tell us, okay, why don't you work with a certain artifacts? I mean, please make something out of it. So it's a kind of a process of discussion and negotiations about what the design should end up be. And this is how Singapore looked like, before when it was a sleepy port. Of course, we know that it was never a sleepy port. And then with all this PVC boat. I just go quickly. It's a cultural practice. The child play games, toys, and the abacus, of course, the one that I was talking about, and the satay fan. And we also like to capture contemporary practice like the dragon boat in Kallang River, as well as the Macritchie, canoeing in Macritchie, and of course the natural heritage. So I think I have to stop here. But I also want to say that we also like to do some collaborations, and this is with the Xin Shang, who's famous with their furniture design. Here they're using our fabric. So that brought us here, the last slide. So if you are already been downstairs, so you see the Tung An Moi Kun, sorry, my pronunciation is so horrible, but you know which one it is. I think you see one of the door. So this is our reinterpretation of this history of a Cantonese opera performance of this the clan house there. Okay, so I stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate how they have hidden little elements in all the different scarves that you have to look out for. I think that's quite a fun way to look at their scarves. So from the first presentation from Jason and Cherin, where they shared about how they translated a brand's heritage into a spatial environment, to Santhi and Sari's approach of using, getting a country's heritage and putting that into fashion textiles. I think it's quite good to see the different perspectives. And next up we have Steve, who is also a mixed multimedia artist and designer, and he will share his take on how he uses heritage in his work. So yeah, let's welcome Steve on stage.
Hello, hi. I've never spoken about my art in public before. I'm just thinking about it now, so it feels a little self-indulgent, but just indulge me. So I grew up in Hong Kong in the 80s, and so a lot of my world was, can you just go to the next slide? My kind of childhood was Hollywood posters with Chinese subtitles. I'd go to the cinema and I'd see English films or American films with Chinese subs. And I think I've always enjoyed that kind of that combination of things that my friends in England or my peers when I went to UK, they were like, how come you've got a screenshot of a Pink Panther cartoon with Chinese subtitles? And they were like kind of artworks in their own right. You know, when you take them out of context from Singapore or Hong Kong, you start to see really, this is a surreal poster to most people in the States, but for me it was kind of second nature, and I think this is key. These two images are quite key in like the whole body of work that I do, and it's that sort of juxtaposition of old and new and kind of east and west. And so, for example, like I love mining record stores. I have no idea what this is, okay? This could be religious for all I know. It's bad that I don't know. But when I look at it, I think this would be great if there was loads of Pokemon in there. and I think it's about, you know, things that trigger your imagination. And so I see, you mentioned things that potentially in Singapore people find banal or normal or boring or think you kind of overlook. And then when you come with a kind of critical eye, or at least I've got a background as a designer, like I'm trained as a graphic designer. But I think I always appreciated beautiful old typography. You know, we see here, I don't know what it means, but I can appreciate its form and I appreciate its craft. And I think it's important to respect those things and at the same time not copy it, but just kind of be inspired by it. And I think what I'm doing with this stuff, this is screen printing. This is silk screening on rice paper. So I'm kind of trying to, I mean, this is a great example of a sort of remix, like the method and the way that they've created these banners by silk screening. It's the same techniques they've been using for hundreds of years. And I think there's something nice about doing stuff in the computer and then taking it back to what you do, fabric, textile design, and kind of having things that have a quality about them, which seems to be disappearing in sort of modern production. You know, it's all about fast and efficient and not about craftsmanship and attention to detail. So here we are in Bukit Paso and Chinatown, and I love this really rich visual kind of packaging of medicines, packaging of the, I don't know what half the products are, but I just love the aesthetic. And so this apparently is to cure headaches. And so I couple this with the noise of cartoons and modern culture, and that sort of parody plays well with me. Like I get a headache from my son watching cartoons, and I just felt like a nice marriage of images. Maybe it's kind of a bit butchering to whoever originally designed this packaging, but I'm kind of hoping they would give me a bit of a break. And then of course it's about what can we do that's applying these graphics onto other traditional techniques, the ceramic vases, ceramic plates. We did this with Super Mama. I think the Super Mama talk here today or something. Anyway, and this blue and white aesthetic, it's really fun to start to see where you can take it in a new way. And then this idea of taking old paintings, these are ceramics, so this is screen print onto ceramics. Again, this is a collage, so I love this vase, but I thought it could really do with a dead person's hand coming out the top. And I don't know why, but this is just me trying to express myself or add like imagination into otherwise perhaps overlooked images. And then again, I love antique frames, things that if you go to buy a frame now, it's all very monoculture. It's all white, 3 centimeters, blocks, black or white or maybe wood. And I think I've been spending my whole last 5 or 10 years mining like antique stores and trying to find these beautiful, these are rosewood, some of these are really heavy objects. And they're beautifully made. Maybe they're a bit rough around the edges, but I kind of like that. And then you just replace the glass with screen print onto the mirror and create, a kind of really beautiful object. Again, this is screen printing onto ceramics in the kind of blue and white style. Really heavy, but fun to play with materials that seem to be gone and forgotten. And then, of course, this goes further. It's like, well, what could we do next? And these are those kind of Chinese bedside table medicine cabinets. And then I take kind of cult literature, Naked Lunch, Lord of the Flies, and see if I can create a kind of visual around those books and be inspired by that. And then lanterns, okay, these are dime a dozen. You can find them all over the vintage stores, and they're just lying in dusty piles. And why not just refurbish them, upcycle them, and this is just printing onto the glass, and it really, it takes it somewhere new. And then this is the latest exhibition that I did. It was about a year ago, and I made perfumes. I made 6 perfumes, which were packaged, inspired by this kind of aesthetic. And this was the installation. These were the different fragrances, and I created an artwork inspired by the fragrance, but still kept within the realm of this stuff. Oh wait, and then are we at the end? Okay. And so I'm just going to show you something. I need to use a different computer, but it's now we're doing sort of what's next. This is a certain thing we can explore, but then it gets into digital media. By the way, while he's doing that, I'll do a quick plug for the GIF Festival, end of March, GIF Festival, however you like to say it. It's going to be at Gilman, so please come to that, and you're going to see. This is a sound reactive ceramic vase. You can shout. If you could turn off the lights, it'd be better, but I've got no whistle. And there's installations like that. We are, again, it's inspired by the old, but really trying to see where we can go with it next. Is that the next one, the other one there? So we call this organic ceramic. This one is different. So this is like, kind of where the art is going now. And then of course you have fun. How do we show these works? Can we show it in an old medicine cabinet? Can we show the digital screens inside vintage mirrors? And I think that's where the work is heading now, for what I'm doing anyway. Okay?
Everyone is here now. So the first question actually is addressed to all of you. Every time we usually talk about heritage, we speak about it from the perspective of conservation, or conserving and keeping heritage. But from the perspective of Singapore as a younger nation, or for brands that are newer brands and younger brands, do you think it is possible or authentic to build heritage from scratch?
I think it's about what the definition of heritage is first. So I think, to me personally, I think heritage is actually, I think we spoke about this the last time. Heritage is, it's kind of like experiences and memories. It's a consolidation of all that, and it kind of becomes who you are. So heritage is a lot about bringing something along with you, and then you kind of reinterpreting that in your own way. You don't necessarily have to follow it to the T, but it's something that you add on to and you pass it on. So I guess the answer for me is no, it's not something that you can start from scratch, because it's always a part of something else. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just chime in. I think it's about quality, right? So if you're making good quality and that's part of your strategy or your DNA, then I think there's a long-term kind of goal there. So whether it kind of becomes heritage in the future, I don't know. But a lot of brands these days keep reinventing themselves and to stay relevant. And I think sort of heritage the perception of heritage is just old-fashioned and it hasn't been touched for years, and that's why it's kind of heritage. But I think it is evolving and it will evolve, and I think designers love playing with these kind of ideas and repackaging it. You know, this Streets of Clans is a classic example, and the Peranakan scarf, you know, beautiful reworking of an idea, and I think we're allowed to, you know.
I think it's not, I mean, it's not really you start from zero, right? Because I believe that heritage is actually something that grounds you, like to who you are. You know, it's the first thing that shapes you as a person, and that's your heritage. And it's something that's always evolving. It's organic. So yeah, you know, it's not from zero, because you always have that set of things that you brought into life when you're born, whether it's from the place where you grew up with, or from your parents, or from, you know, from your culture, from your religion, from whatever. So there's always this set of things that's always with you. Whether you want to embrace it, or whether you want to divert from it, is really up to you. But yeah, I guess I hope that answered the questions.
Yes, so it's tied to identity as well. So the next question is addressed to Santhi and Sari. You shared a bit about how you know, you like to go on walks, and then suddenly you would show up at her house. She was sharing how you suddenly show up at her house after your long walks.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, walks is something that everyone can do. It's a very accessible activity. Can you share a bit more about the importance of walks and immersion into environment, and how that gives you a fresh perspective on heritage?
Yeah, actually, we got so many ideas by just walking around Singapore. So I don't have a car, so I walk everywhere with MRT and bus, or something is another story. But
he walks from office to home every day.
And how far is the walk every day?
Oh, it's not long, it's not 4 kilos, it's not that much. But anyway, but the thing is, it's not just simply walking. I think because there is just walking mindlessly, but you can walk around, but you really pay attention to things. And especially when you are really walking, you know, instead of being in a bus or not a car, you are placed in a certain angle to your surrounding, all the buildings, all the trees, and then you start noticing things. And I think this kind of walk is very inspirational. So you actually capture details that otherwise it will be just like a blur when you're on a fast-moving vehicles. So yeah, I guess it's, maybe that's how can I answer the questions. Yeah.
Thank you. And so for Steve, how about, you know, with a lot of young people nowadays, they have nothing to, or no association or no relation to what heritage is. I mean, like, how you define heritage the other day, so that we could tell a 7-year-old kid it's just shit from the old days, right? So if you had to get young people curious and interested in heritage, how would you go about that?
I think it only occurs later in life. I mean, the older you get, the more you appreciate the things that were around then, and there's a stronger bond between you and those objects of the past. And I think it's a pretty universal idea. I think young people, to force heritage down their throat, they hate it. Like, we used to hate like going to church for the, you know, the cathedral for like school trips. It's like, come on, you know. But then I think later, as an adult, you go to the cathedral and you're like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And you know, you kind of empathize with the process of creation of some of these really intricately designed masterpieces. You know, often it is. It's really people taking the time and pouring love into their work, and you can see it. I mean, there's a table over there that's kind of really nicely carved. I mean, that's handmade, you know? Jesus, I don't know how to do that, but you've got to admire it. And I think if I was 7 years old, I would like just not even see it. And I think it's really just something, and you enrich your life just by tuning into these things. I think you articulated it really well. You put yourself into angles which are unusual and see things with a lens, you know, with a sort of designer's lens. And I think being able to appreciate those things is a great way of enhancing your life, actually.
So it's looking at the same thing, but just at a different age, you see it completely differently.
Just being able to appreciate it, I think, you know, people get great kind of warmth from those things.
Okay, thank you. And actually, so this question now is addressed to both of you. You mentioned in your presentation just now as well that, you know, something to do with Peranakan heritage is about not having shortcuts. And even in your process, when you approach the way you look at heritage, it's so easy to buy printed Peranakan tiles versus getting the original tiles. And you also mentioned that it's a spirit of not having shortcuts, right? Can you share more about this and how that ties into what you think what the spirit of heritage is? So no shortcuts and the spirit of heritage, because you mentioned a lot of that.
I think, yeah, it was just like a reflection of how they wanted to express their cooking. So the cooking is all about putting the heart and soul, putting that little effort, using the best ingredients. Then of course the tiles had to be that. If I use like cheap reproduction tiles, then it wouldn't be fair to what the whole idea of what the client wanted to express be. So I think the spirit is more in all these little details. I think heritage has a lot of details. I think like what Steve says, like, you know, all these tables, and we don't notice them, but it takes a lot of effort to do a lot of these things. And in the old days, actually before computers, and you know, all this building and carving and all this all by hand and no machinery, and just be amazed at how they actually did it. Yeah.
You have anything to? Okay. So now we open the floor to questions. Anyone have any questions for any of the speakers today? If not, no? Any? Everyone too shy? Okay, then it's okay. Yeah, you have a question? Yeah.
I guess it's for everybody, but do any of you guys think that heritage can be diluted by being used over and over again, or by being exposed in different ways? Can it be a bad thing, going back to it constantly?
So just in case anyone at the back didn't hear, she was asking if heritage can be diluted because we keep using it and repurposing it over and over again, and whether heritage loses its essence.
I think it's about how it's applied, you know. Going forward, it's kind of, there's a phrase, it's not where you take it from, it's where you take it to. I think it applies here, you know. And so sometimes I look at my work and I'm like, is that really doing it any justice to the original? And it's a constant question for a designer, or at least an artist, always is questioning whether what they're doing has any value. And I think maybe younger, naive designers make some mistakes and ruin a perfectly good Peranakan tile. But having said that, as long as there's a critical process, I think it can be okay. Can it be watered down? Possibly. There could be a trendy thing for a while and you get a bit sick of the aesthetic. But there's heritage from every country and every culture around the world. And I think, you know, it's always there and it's always evolving, you know. The 70s is going to be heritage soon, you know, God forbid. But like, this is happening and it's constantly moving forward. Like 2019 is going to be heritage, like eventually. So yeah, it's a moving, organic thing.
That answer your question? Okay. So now to close off the session, we'll just ask a question to all the speakers present. If you could pick one item, icon, building that encapsulates Singapore's heritage, who or what would it be?
I think it's very difficult just to pick one because Singapore is really a melting pot. So, I mean, I'm not just being diplomatic here, but it's true. So there are so many different aspects, so many different facets. So I think it's, I don't think I can answer that.
Well, I like Hopar Villa. I'm not sure if it's exactly on point, but it's a cool thing to go for inspiration.
What do you like about Hoffa Villa?
It's surreal. I mean, you know, what patron commissions a garden of hell? You know, it just doesn't happen. Even today, it's sort of Bond-esque bad guy's house. It's amazing. So yeah, I don't see that often anywhere in the world. So yeah, kind of credit to Singapore for having that. Hong Kong got rid of theirs because they thought it was bad kind of juju, but there you
I'm a huge foodie person, so I'm just gonna relay this back to food. I think it's kind of like Teochew porridge. I think like what you said about Singapore being a melting pot, right? So Teochew porridge is kind of like that, like heritage to me. Each dish is some grandmother's recipe or passed down from generations, or representative of different dialects as well sometimes. So you pick your pick at each dish of different types, and then you have it at your own preference as a meal. I think that kind of sums up, heritage for me. Yep.
Okay. It's quite personal also, but I think because of like what everyone's mentioned, it's hard to define Singapore. We don't really have a Singapore identity, right? We're a mix of everything. But when I think about it, what kind of represents Singapore a little bit to me in a quite positive way, some people might say Lee Kuan Yew, right? But I think it's Fandi Ahmad. Okay, very simple, very simple. So he's the people's people, I wanted him to run for president actually, but and then he reaches out to people, he's humble, and he's kind of like worked overseas. So it's like typical Singaporeans, we study, we work, and then we go overseas. We come back with a little bit more knowledge, and then we try to live our life in Singapore, further on with that as a Singaporean. So and he has got he's deeply entrenched in his Malay culture, and also he's still Asian roots, but with a very Western mindset as well.
So if there is one thing that I think it represents Singapore in terms of heritage, don't shoot me, Singlish. Because it really reflects that Singapore is, like my sister says, as a melting pot of culture. Everything is there. You have every single culture reflected there. And also the way you use Singlish is quite different. If you're Singaporean Chinese, your Singlish will be quite different from the Malay Chinese, right? And if you're Indian as well, your Indian Singaporean is also quite different from everybody else. So I think that's what really, is the essence of Singapore. So it's not so much about, being like, oh, this is very exotic, people try to copy it, in a very demeaning way. But for me, it's very unique, it's very Singapore, and we should be proud of it.
So we've come to the end of our session. Can we just thank the speakers and thank all of you for your time? The speakers will be hanging around for a bit after the session, so feel free to come up to them, ask them any questions you might want to ask them individually as well. Thank you.